Welcome to the General Consul of Italy, Francesco Genuardi. Thank you for being here, and to Giovanni Caforio. Last year we organized together with Maria Teresa Cometto a series here at the Institute dedicated to the top Italian manager in US company. Was a very successful series, and I was very happy to host Italy here at the Institute. But we were not able to have also a woman in this series. Not because there are not Italian women who are top managers in US company, but because it was impossible to have them here. And so when we met at the beginning of this here, and we discussed which series we could do this year, we thought to compensate this situation of last year and to have here a series dedicated only to Italian women, Italian outstanding women in the US. We will have here art critic and composer and music organizer, financial manager, chef, also chef. But I'm very happy to open this series with a scientist, one of the most important scientists in this country, Ilaria Capua. Ilaria Capua is director of the One Health Center of Excellence at the University of Florida. Is known worldwide for her studies on influenza viruses, particularly avian influenza. In 2006, Capua decided to disclose her studies on the genetic sequence of avian influenza virus in the publicly accessible GenBank, instead of giving it only to a few databases, to support the model of an open source science in which finding can be freely shared while giving credit to the scientists involved. Research choices ended by changing the international approach to anti-pandemia plans, which prompted the magazine Seed to call her a revolutionary mind and scientific American, to place her in a list of 50 top scientists. In 2011, she won the Penn Vet World Leadership in Animal Health Award, the world's most prestigious award in vet, and she was a member of Italian Parliament between 2013 and 2016. So enjoy. I leave the floor to Ilaria Capua and Maria Teresa Cometto.
Thank you all for coming, and I want to thank the director, Giorgio Van Straten, for trusting me in organizing this new series. I'm sure we will have a lot of fun, and it will be very interesting. From now to May, the series starts tonight and goes on until May. Yeah, so it will be all Italian women, except on March the 8th, we will have an American woman, but who is very in love with Italy, the Italian language and culture, and also she's a great feminist, so the perfect person for the 8th of March, the International Women's Day, and she's Erica Young, the author of Fear of Flying, so we will have her here. Thank you, Ilaria, for coming here from Florida. The first time I met Ilaria was in August 2016, She came and picked me up at the Gainesville airport with her red Fiat 500. And we spent together the whole day because I had to write an article about her for the magazine Grazia. We had a lot of fun. I was struck by how strong Ilaria is and at the same time so charming, very focused on science and at the same time so glamorous and elegant.
Well, if you live in Florida, it's not that difficult to be glamour. Everybody has flip-flops with a lot of respect, but let's say that the benchmark isn't exactly like New York.
Anyway, so yeah, so but Ilaria defies all the stereotypes about a researcher in a lab. And 11 years ago, she defies also the most important organization in the world about health. In fact, in 2006, Ilaria became internationally famous as the rebel against the World Health Organization because, as Giorgio said earlier, she refused to put the findings of her research about the avian flu on its closed database, and instead she published it on this database accessible to all the scientists. So can you, Ilaria, explain what open source science means and why it is so important for our health?
Yeah, so thank you very much, Maria Teresa. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm really happy. You know, I'm an immigrant, like a lot of you. I've only been here for nearly 2 years. I'm new to the country, and it's very welcoming to be here. So thank you to Giorgio Van Straten, and thank you for all the people who are here. Right, so, okay, 2006 is like over 10 years ago, and so every time I talk about this, I say, I don't want to talk about it anymore, because it's done. But basically, today, we are used to sharing the information we have. Even our scientific information, much more than what we did in those days. And so basically, this is a story. The world was concerned about a new pandemic virus, which could have emerged from the avian flu, H5N1 virus, which was circulating in 3 continents. And our lab had obtained for characterization the first African strain of H5N1. So the international community was very interested in the sequence of this virus because with the sequence of the virus, you can understand how the virus is circulating, you can understand its pathogenicity, you can develop diagnostics, you can develop vaccines. And so I was asked by the WHO to put the sequence of the virus, which is like a fingerprint for the non-scientists, in a password-protected database, which was at Los Alamos. And in exchange for the sequence, they would have given me the password to the database. And I would have been, together with other 15 laboratories in the world, one of the few groups that had the password to this database. And you know, if you work for science, you work for public health, and you really believe in what you're doing, and you're in what people think is a pre-pandemic phase, you want to do the best thing that you can. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to put my sequence in GenBank. GenBank is, it's a database of genetic data of lots of things, many pathogens, and I said it's open access. In this way, all the laboratories in the world who want to work with avian influenza can download my sequence. And so I said to the WHO, I said, no thanks. If you want the sequence, it's in GenBank. And that was only, let's say, the first one of the big messes I put myself into. because after that, we ignited with my group an international debate on data sharing in pre-pandemic phase. So what sense does it make that all the scientists around the world with the at the dawn of a pandemic, or what we thought was a dawn of a pandemic, keep their data to themselves? It doesn't really make any sense, because the pandemic doesn't look at who runs the lab, the pandemic just hits. And so we ignited this debate and we changed a paradigm.
Yeah, because nowadays it's common practice.
Nowadays, I mean, if you look at the new emerging viruses like Ebola, other virus, I mean, nobody would even think of not putting this information in an open resource. And so we ignited the debate, and, you know, at times it's not what you do, because I thought it was really obvious that, you know, somebody had to do it, and I had no doubts that that was the right thing to do, but it's when you do it. And I was very fortunate to do it at the right time. Yeah, at the right time.
Why viruses? Why did you specialize in viruses? What attracted you to this field?
Well, because life takes you wherever it takes you, and I ended up with viruses, and I really like them. They're a lot of fun. We all have our little favorite things, and we, you know, even within virologists have their own little favorite viruses, because, you know.
Which is your own?
Well, influenza. Influenza. It's a beautiful virus.
By the way, talking about the current influenza, which they say it's very serious, and somebody says that vaccines are not as effective as they used to be. What's going on?
Yeah. So influenza vaccines, they are produced, or at least the strain that is inside the influenza vaccine is selected 9 months before in the other hemisphere, because influenza goes around the world, and so they see what virus is emerging or is present and is dominant in the southern hemisphere, and they have their models, and they decide, you know, we think that this one is going to be the dominant one, and unfortunately they're not always right. And so this year, actually, the coverage against the H3N2 isn't very good. But this does not mean that you should not have your influenza vaccine. You should get your influenza vaccine, because it is also particularly aggressive this year. And in any case, not getting your influenza vaccine really doesn't make sense. I mean, influenza is a preventable disease, and we should all do our own, we should take on our own part of responsibility in preventing this disease, particularly in elderly people and in children, but also in adults, because if we get influenza, we stay at home and we're not productive and we don't go to work and we amplify the infection.
Yeah, but as everybody knows, there is a lot of arguments against vaccines in Italy and also in the US. Some critics say that all the fuss about vaccines is fueled by big pharma because they think only about their profits. What is your take?
The take is that actually, for those of you who read Italian, who might want to invest 99 euro cents in an issue of Il Foglio, which came out sometime on last Monday, on the 12th, we published a series of articles of vaccination from the point of view of a philosopher, vaccination from the point of view of a pharmacologist, and vaccination from the point of view of a health economist. My three co-writers were Professor Borgonovi from Bocconi University, Professor Curi from Università di Padova, who is a philosopher, and Professor Garattini, who is a pharmacologist, and Mario Negri. And basically, I mean, the bottom line is that that vaccines have brought mankind to where it is now. I mean, we wouldn't be here if our parents hadn't been vaccinated and if they hadn't vaccinated us, because vaccines have prevented the spread of deadly diseases or diseases that could, take away health and diseases which could have serious complications. So I would also like to add that pharma is not a non-profit organization. They obviously have to make their profit. We wouldn't have a plan B if pharma wasn't making vaccines. And it is our responsibility as educated people actually to understand more why vaccines are so important for example, for those people who cannot be vaccinated. Because some people, because they have some other disease, it is risky for them to have vaccines. But if they then get infected with the disease, they actually will develop a very serious form of the disease. So vaccines are a very complicated and complex issue. They have to be understood, as I said, from multiple perspectives. But if we didn't have vaccines against, diphtheria, for example, I mean, the generation of our parents and our grandparents, polio, I mean, there are vaccines that have, taken us to the healthy life that we are living now. And we should never forget it.
Yeah. Let's go back a little to your childhood. In your last book, Io trafficante di virus, you wrote that since you were a little girl, you dreamed of becoming a researcher. Why?
Yeah, I had no doubt. Simple. Some girls want to be dancers, some want to be astronauts. I wanted to be a scientist. I knew that I was going to be in life sciences. I couldn't have been like a physicist. It's too difficult, too much maths. But I just knew, and so I had no doubt. That's what I was going to do.
But who inspired you?
No one. Myself. We didn't have any scientists in the family. My grandfather he had a degree in agricultural sciences. But he wasn't a scientist. He was more of a policymaker. He was in economics of agriculture. And I just wanted to be a scientist. And then when I went to university, then I started reading books about scientists and the Italian scientists like Renato Dulbecco and Rita Levi di Montalcini. But I knew that was going to do. That was what I wanted to do. So.
Your father was a lawyer,
My father
right?
was a
and
lawyer.
he wanted you to become a lawyer
Yes.
as well, and you rebelled also against him.
Yes.
Right. I read somewhere that his hunting dogs were something that pushed you towards animals and.
Yeah. So
viruses.
I had to come up with a story. Okay. I had to come up with a story to obtain two objectives. One, go to university and do a science degree. Two, go away from home. These were my two objectives. And so...
Which was in Rome, by the way.
Which I was in
Home.
Rome. Yeah, I was living in Rome. So my father, we always had animals in the house. He used to go hunting. And so I convinced him that I really wanted to be a veterinarian. That I really loved these dogs and the cats, and that was really, really what I wanted to do, because in Rome there isn't a vet school. Scusa, I have to go to Perugia. And my father said, "What do you mean you're going to Peru?" I really want to be a vet. I couldn't go to like the school of the medical school in Rome. No, I want to be a vet. So, I knew that I was never going to practice. So I like animals, I do. But I just wanted to be a scientist and go away from home. And that's why I became a vet. So any animal that comes near me is in big danger. So let me tell you this. We have a cat at home. So my daughter really wanted a kitten, and so I'd never wanted any animals, but you give up. You say, okay. So we got this little kid. My husband is also a vet, and my husband is Scottish, and he graduated at Edinburgh Vet School, which is the top veterinary school in the universe. Okay, for the these Scottish, they have a sort of inbuilt superiority complex. And so we get this kitten, and we call the kitten Scott.
Of course.
Scott. Let's say, exploring into the cat's back end, when the cat was about 3 months old, I said, but Scottish veterinarian, are you sure that this is a male? And they look at me in the family, they say, you can only look through a microscope. You don't even know what a cat looks like. Okay. So my daughter, when the cat was 6 months old, goes to the veterinarian to have the cat spayed. And the veterinarian says, so this is in Padova, where like people knew me. And so my daughter goes with the cat and says, okay, so what's your name? No, what's your parents' name? Ilaria Capua. Ah, Dottoressa Capua, the veterinarian says. Yeah, that's my mom. And so my daughter was about 11 or 12. We dropped her there. So, okay, so you would like the cat to be castrated. It's, what's the name of the cat? Scott. The veterinarian lifts the tail, said, no, this cat is a female cat. Brava, dottoressa Capua. I said, grazie.
Una bella figura.
No, embarrassing. And so the cat's name developed from Scott into Scottina. Poi I said, let's call her Scottex. And then she became Potty. So now she's Potty. She's an ex-female Italian cat. But yeah, so that's how good but you see, it's because nobody listens to me in the family, because I had actually noticed that there was something missing there.
Wow. So, yeah, you started your work as a researcher in 91 in Teramo, a small town in Abruzzo. And there you experimented a new model for Italy, I guess, of a partnership with private companies to fund your research. What about this experience?
Yeah, so I worked in several of these institutes, actually. They're called istituti zooprofilattici. Okay? So, they sort of say, well, what do you do? Do you provide condoms to elephants? That's what, that's what the comment you get. But these istituti zooprofilattici, they are a network, of public health veterinary public health institutions on the territory. And of course, there's never enough money to do things and to do the things you want to do. And so I started working accidentally, as it always happened, with poultry diseases, with poultry viruses. And I started working with the companies that farm these chickens. And I said, look, if you want us to, if you get a disease, then it's difficult to manage. But if you want to do some prevention, we need to do surveillance. And so I established some monitoring programs for them. And I started to fund the activity of the lab. And this activity and working for pharmaceutical companies and for, basically the industry, I was able to grow the number of people working with me. At one point, when I left my lab in Padova, I had a group. So I started off with a group of like less than 10, and in just over 10 years, there were 70 of us. 40 of which were on grant money, because if you can get good people in and then they start writing grants, and then you just generate a positive spiral by which your group is funded. And so we started with these private companies, but then we grew and we got a lot of European funds and we started lots of international collaborations. And then, if things work and you deliver a service and you publish and you do good work, anche in Italia, you can do, you can do good things. You can be competitive. So,
And in fact, talking about European projects and European authorities, when you moved to Veneto, you achieved your first international success when you convinced the European authorities that the vaccination of poultry was the best way to prevent the avian flu. And at that time, it looked a crazy idea. Now, again, it's a commonplace, right? And in your book, you wrote, quote, the Italian creativity often produces revolutionary ideas, but then there isn't a system to transform the ideas into something practical. We made it at the Istituto Zooprofilattico Sperimentale delle Venezie, unquote. How did you make it?
No, so we had a really simple, okay, this is back in, it's even before 2006. We're talking about 1999, 2000. There was a devastating outbreak of avian influenza in the area, in chickens. We're talking about animals, in the area which has the highest poultry production in the country. And we had to kill, the authorities, because there was a stamping out policy. So infected animals needed to be killed. 17 million birds. And because there was no way to vaccinate these animals. And so, I said, but, why? We have marker vaccines. Marker vaccines are used for many other diseases. And so why should we not use this for poultry? And we developed the system, which was then became known as a DIVA system, which was like really easy. Something that is so simple that I'm not even going to explain it to you. But it worked as a marker vaccine. And so, because the problem was that if you vaccinated your poultry, because the European rules were those of a non-vaccination policy, you could not export your products. And of course, you don't rear poultry because they're nice pet animals. You rear them because you want to sell the eggs and you want to sell the meat. And so with this system, we were able to vaccinate our birds, eradicate avian influenza, and continue to export in Europe. And obviously, because Europe is a common market, we could have continued to export our stuff everywhere. And actually, just now, there's several outbreaks of avian influenza in Europe. It's another virus. And they are not vaccinating. They're not vaccinated. Well, because you see what happened to me for pushing vaccines. So, you need to be brave, and you could have, some kickbacks. Yes.
Yeah. In fact, after winning the Vet World Leadership in Animal Health Award, which is the Nobel Prize in your field,
they made a mistake.
Why?
No, I always say when I got the email saying that I had been awarded this, I thought it was spam. No, like, why do you want to give it to me? Like it really didn't make sense. And actually, I received an email from a colleague who is Paul Gibbs, who works at the University of Florida by chance, who had nominated me. And in the email it said, it's time to open the champagne. This was 2011, and at the time, there was a lot of spam coming through emails with Rolex, champagne, and Viagra. And I thought that it was spam because, Paul Gibbs, it's time to open the champagne. I said, oh, I'll delete this email. And then I said, oh, but that's from Paul Gibbs. And so maybe it's not spam, and it was because they had given me this award.
How did you celebrate? Did you open the champagne?
Yeah, it was very nice. It was very emotional, and I was actually the first and only woman who only won that prize. You know why only? Because after me they stopped it. Because it was it's true. It was funded by Vernon Hill, who is a very well-known businessman, and after me they decided to stop it. So, yeah,
well,
one and only.
So the day after, the year after, you started having some problems in Italy. A big new project in Veneto was completely cancelled. And then you were the victim of fake news that at that time was not called like this, but it was fake news. And yeah, you were accused of having profited from vaccines, and it's the story that you tell in your book, Io trafficante di vaccini. You were totally, I mean, unprepared, but I mean, all the accusation fell down.
Cleared.
Cleared, you were totally cleared. And how did you survive all these years? What gave you the strength to go on and to fight?
Yeah, so
what happened?
This is, you know, I don't know how many of you know this story, but it was really, really bad. I was in Parliament at the time, just because these things happened to me. I like bump into oops. So Mario Monti had phoned me at the beginning of on the giorno della Befana Day. He phoned me to say if I was interested in running as a running for election. It's actually quite a funny story, but I don't know if we have, maybe if we have time I'll say it later. So he phoned me up, and I was ready for a change, because this big project that you just mentioned, which was about moving my research group into a research tower, which had been developed in Padova by a private foundation. With all my group, we were supposed to move into this research tower, but then the project was killed. I had the political will, we had the money, we had everything, but, okay, too much detail, it didn't go through. And so in Padova, I had exposed myself because I really wanted to do this, and I lost. And so I was ready for a change. I was going to leave Italy and go in Scotland, no, because it's too cold and it rains too much and my hair gets messy, but I was, you know, ready to go somewhere else. And Mario Monti phoned me up. I didn't know him, and he said, would you be willing to run for election? And I said, like, how much time do I have? And he said, 24 hours. And I said, yes. I said yes because I thought that this could have been a very good opportunity for Italy, and with my contribution, and I don't want to seem as, you know, somebody who has too much of a high idea of herself. But, you know, I could bring in the parliamentary discussions certain aspects of science that, like, politicians don't know. And so I thought I could make a difference, like many of our friends, Ilaria Borletti, many colleagues, sorry, not colleagues scientists, colleagues parliamentarians. We had Alberto Bombassei, we had Paolo Vitelli, we had a whole group of Carlo Calenda was actually, who is now he's the Minister for Economic Development. He was part of our group, so we thought that we could really do something. And not even a year after we were elected, I received a phone call from a journalist of L'Espresso, which is an Italian magazine, which is a weekly magazine. And this guy said to me, so there's a major investigation on influenza and vaccines and corruption in the health system, and you are the person who is being, who is like the criminal mind of this organization. No, I'm like, I was sitting in Parliament, like I said, what do you mean? Yes, there's this investigation by the Procura di Roma, and how would you like to reply to these accusations, like extortion, corruption, well, all sorts of things, including having created an epidemic. So, and if you are charged with this accusation, you risk life imprisonment. Life imprisonment, ergastolo, that's what I risked. And but like it wasn't me. I mean, what are you talking about? I've been a scientist, you know, and basically they said that I had promoted data sharing and promoted the availability of sequences because I wanted to create viruses in the laboratory so that I could then sell vaccines. Anyway, it was very, very, very hard because like life imprisonment, me, why? Like, but ultimately you have to put yourself together and you have to find your way out of this. And how did I keep my mental sanity? I don't know if I have a lot of mental sanity left. I know that I had very clear in my mind that I needed to get myself out of that. And so, together with my colleague, Giovanni Catori, who was my deputy, who actually also left the lab and is now in Vienna at a United Nations agency, just to prove that, you know, Italian scientists, they get jobs elsewhere. We had to go through papers and emails of like 10 or 15 years before, in which I had said to colleagues all over the world, yes, you can have our viruses, because that's what I was doing. I was sharing the information that we had in the lab with other colleagues to face the pandemic threat. And so we had to put together piles and piles of papers saying, okay, so-and-so asked us for the virus on this date. This is the authorization that we had from the ministry. This is when we packed it. This is when we sent it. And this is when they received it. And it was really hard to find your way out of this mountain of accusations.
And a sort of a Kafkian
yes.
trial, which never started, by the way, because when the judge saw the paper, said that there is no point. I mean, there is no crime, there is nothing.
There is no case to answer.
Exactly, yeah, incredibly. But in the meantime, you had anyway decided to move to Florida, to the University of Florida, and become the responsible of this new center, One Health. Can you explain what is the idea behind One Health?
Well, it's basically that human health, animal health, and environmental health are part of the same problem. And therefore, if you push something too much in one direction, then you will have spillover effects on other areas of health. For example, antimicrobial resistance. So, you know about superbugs? If you use too many antibiotics in animal populations, or even in people, because there's a problem of overprescription, or in plants, can you believe it? They use antibiotics in plants. You will create, it's true.
Which plants? Which plants?
Well, they use some on, they used, especially in this country, unfortunately, it happens, to keep the, let's say, bacterial population under control, and actually to control some diseases of plants. They suggest that one of the solutions could be using penicillin, but then you use penicillin to spray a tree, and that goes in the soil, and then it goes in the water, and it just creates resistance. And so basically we develop integrated approach to managing health as part of one problem.
Mm-hmm. And what have you achieved so far in 1 year and a half?
Well, first of all, I have reorganized the center, because the center was in somebody else's hand. This person had left, and so we organized this. And then I have established a series of collaborations. So my center is funded by the vet school, the agricultural school, and public health. And so through, for example, the artificial intelligence center we have at UF, because UF has, the University of Florida has, the third or fourth most powerful supercomputer there is in the United States, in the academic system of the United States. So what our vision is to use some of the tools that are offered by the digital revolution, in particularly deep learning and artificial intelligence, to manage through a big data approach the health of humans, animals, and the environment. And so this is what we're doing.
Fantastic. May I ask you a personal question, which interests all women? How did you manage to balance your life between research and family? In your book, so I'm not revealing any secret, in your book say that working so long hours in the lab cost you your first marriage, and but then you had a second marriage, and you're still married to Richard, to the Scott
Yes.
guy, and you have a wonderful
Yeah.
girl. So how did you manage to put everything together?
Well, I mean, I really worked a lot as a young scientist, and I had my one and only child. And the reason why I have an only child is not because I only wanted one child, but it's because I had such a horrible delivery that I nearly risked, and my daughter risked, and I said, okay, I'm done with this. Never again. Never, ever, ever. And it was the worst experience of my life. But I had her late in life. I was 38. How do I balance? I am very organized, and I have a fantastic husband. Yeah, I mean, you don't do things by yourself. You need support, and Richard he wears a kilt. So he's,
He's tough.
He's, like women. Yeah.
Talking again about women, what do you think about the Me Too movement? And is there, are women harassed also in labs?
Yeah, so I think, so in my previous book, I wrote I talk about an episode that happened to me with a university professor, an Italian university professor, who at a meeting, there were only men and myself. To cut a very long story short, during a conversation about science, said, "I never know you had this nice pair of tits." Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And it's written in my book, the 2012 book, and like nobody ever, at that time nobody raised any eyebrows. It's in the book, So this happens all the time. It happens all the time. Now, whether this is appropriate or not is another story. I personally don't think it's appropriate. I think that Italy is actually quite bad at this. It's much worse than many other countries. However, I think that we have to move on. So I think that the biggest fragility of the system that the Me Too movement has pointed out is that careers of women are influenced by external factors that can be linked to men who have intentions, and you can either be favorable as a woman to these intentions, or you can reject them. I mean, this is like, there's no in between, because it's like being sort of pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. So you're either agree or you reject. This means that if you agree to, this is a general statement. If you agree to that type of behavior, your career as a woman could be facilitated. if you reject that type of behavior, your career could be more difficult. What does this mean? It means that careers of women have been influenced in, positively or negatively, because somebody could, try and make life really difficult for you if you reject these, let's say, this behavior. What I think we need to do as women is fight for merit. So, one thing that really bothers me is when you say, oh, but you see, look at what she's achieved. Ah, yeah, but because she's the mistress of so-and-so. No, we have to get rid of this. We have to put merit back into the career of women, where it belongs. So, if you are worth a woman who is a good worker, who is a good scientist, who is a good lawyer, who is whatever she is and is good at her profession, then you should have the same opportunities that men have. If you are not so good, and maybe you're very beautiful, or you're not, I don't know, you should have the same job opportunities that a man would have with those skills. This is where I think that the Me Too movement has to go. We have to put talent and merit back where it belongs in the career of women. Because if not, we are actually harming ourselves. Because people, they talk and they don't give us what we deserve, which is to make our talent and our knowledge available for the community.
Yes, and talking about women and career, when you arrived to the University of Florida, you said that you would create some program to encourage leadership of women.
It's going. It's called Ladies for Ladies. It's working. Basically, Ladies for Ladies, they are a series of seminars of women who have achieved goals in their careers, but they don't talk about their career. They talk about themselves. They talk about the difficulties and the hurdles and the difficult decisions that every woman has to take in her life. Because, just to make things clear, the perpetuation of mankind is in the hands of women. Chiaro? There is no way that a man can have a baby. Okay, this is not going to happen. Not even with the best and most improved technology. Non ci passa. No, it's not, they cannot have a baby, okay? Right. So, giusto? Non ci passa. So, given that we are in charge of the perpetuation of mankind, we don't have to be afraid of sharing this responsibility, and we don't have to be afraid of talking to our younger students and to our staff and to the postdocs and young faculty about the difficulties that there are in managing the perpetuation of humanity for who wants to perpetuate it. Because you don't want to perpetuate it, it's okay. Somebody else will do it. That's why we are a group and we are not individuals, right? Somebody else will do it. So I think that it is also our responsibility to talk about these problems and talk about how we have been in hard times and we have had to take difficult decisions. I mean, the biological clock is everybody's problem, not only the problem of women, and so on and so forth. And so we have this seminar series. Actually, there was one yesterday. We have them every month. And they become a conversation. So it's not about me, look at, I'm the provost, I'm the dean. It's not about that. It's about my parents wanted me to marry, because also there are different cultures. In a big university like University of Florida, we have students and staff that come from all over the world. And so some of our students, they say to us, yeah, you know, when I finish my PhD, my parents want me to go back because they found a husband for me. What should I do? Yeah, and it happens. And so, you know, in different parts of the world, things happen differently, but we talk about it, and it's working quite well. So, yeah,
Great.
yeah.
So you work with researchers from all over the world. Do you think that Italian researchers have some trait that can be leveraged for an international career?
Yes, and I'm in favor of diversity. So it's not, so Italians, yes, we like to say to us the Italian creativity. It's true, okay, we do have a spin which is peculiar, but you know what? Lots of other people have spins that are peculiar, and so lots of peculiarity make lots of ideas, and that's, I think, where the best communities of people who work together come from. But viva l'Italia!
Okay. Well, talking about differences between the Italian culture and the American culture, you told me when I was at your university that one thing that you loved about your new job is that here, quote, here there is no fear of making mistakes, unquote. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I noticed in coming to the United States is that if you come up with an idea, in Italy they'll say, no, aspetta. That's the first thing that they'll say to you. Wait a minute. Here, they say, go for it. And if you make a mistake, you put yourself together and you start again. I mean, this is really part of the American culture. And so you're not shamed if you make a mistake. You are not, I would say, even penalized, because in an environment in which meritocracy, like unfortunately in Italy happens, is not let's say, the pillar and the center. It happens that people who, you know, in research environments, they decide to go for a certain project and it doesn't work well and other people shame them. And here instead, you know, it's okay, just get on with it. And that's what life is about. I think that it's a very strong and powerful message that you get in the United States, not to quote the former president, but the yes we can. You know, it is a philosophy that is, I think, very eradicated here, and I very much appreciate.
Yeah, you also told me never say never, and so that's maybe, who knows, one day you will decide to go back to Italy. So I'm asking you, what if the next Italian Prime Minister call you and ask you to become what's the name, Secretary of Health?
No, and the reason is because I've been there. I was there 3.5 years, and it's a really difficult job. I would like, if I were, you know, to be in that position, I would like to do a good job, and I honestly don't think I have the skills. So apart from the fact that now if I whenever I'm approached by the political environment, I become like the cat, like with all the hair. I say, no, thank you, but because it was really hard. But I don't really think I have the skills, and so there are people who can do it better than I can. So and it's not an environment that that I could work in, because there's too many compromises, and there are only so many compromises in life that you can reach. This actually goes back to the Me Too movement. There's only so many compromises, and so I think I have paid my my debt to the Italian system in trying to be part of that system. I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something good. I tried. It didn't work out. Okay. I'll get on with my work and do what I can do. And I'm proud of what I'm doing, and I'm proud of doing it here in the United States.
Okay, but here you are in a part of the Italian system that appreciates you very much, and in fact we are so proud of having you here. So I stop here and I open the discussion with your questions. I'm sure there are many.
Yeah, so one thing that I was actually I wasn't surprised of, but I hadn't really thought about it, is here in the US, when you receive a CV, there is no gender and no date of birth.
No age.
And I think that compared to other countries, here they are years and years ahead. Having said that, now I'm going to say something just, there's mafia everywhere, even in science, and so we know that there are leading groups that they boss around, not only in the States, in Europe, I mean, we know it works like that, but that's, I think, a problem of several systems rather than of rewarding merit of, let's say, minority. I don't even like to say women and minorities because we're not a minority, we're half of the population. So what's this minority story about? But I still think that here and in other countries, things are much, much easier. And we have to do better, though. We have to do better. So
please limit yourself to ask questions. Over there.
So I was sitting, as I said, with middle-aged and advanced-aged men. And this guy was sitting next to me. And I said, I am not going to, I don't know what the word is in English. Gomitata, come si dice? Like an elbow hit. Like, I am not going to give you an elbow hit in the mouth like this because I am a well-educated woman and I am polite. I'm not going to embarrass you in front of everyone. But this is not going to finish here. And I didn't say anything else. I didn't kick him. Yeah. And I wrote it in the book. So it will come. It will come. I don't forget.
Over there.
Well, I mean, that's a very big question. And, Europe is suffering very much now and will suffer even more because of Brexit and the whole research environment. And if I can say something which might sound a little bit paradoxical because, you know, the system is, you know, they are different systems, and here I think research is even more competitive than in Europe, and European grants are quite competitive. But I would say that the biggest difference is the diversity of people who are working in the research environment here and in Europe. So in Europe, with the European research programs, they try to put Europeans together, and it's already difficult enough, also because there's different languages, different power games. If you speak a certain language, it's much easier for you, and so on. But it's a more homogeneous group. Here, you get people really from every corner of the world. And this, I think, is one of the it's paradoxical because now we know that there's a big debate about immigration and so on, but I think that that is, I would say, one of the biggest strengths that there are here.
Can you speak up? Sorry.
So you would like to go to medical school in Italy? Here. Well, Italy is a beautiful place, and you know what, you know, the reason why I spent a lot of time in writing books is because you can do really good things in Italy. I mean, there are some parts of Italy that don't work so well, and it's particularly difficult if you're a woman. There are other parts that are just up there with the best European countries. So if that's what you want to do, and you want to go back, and you want to go, and you want to live there, why not? It's not the same. Well, it's a different country. So, but if you're prepared, and I expect that you go back, and you like it, why not?
By the way, do you collaborate with Italian research institutions?
Yes, I do, and I also have a group of Italians at UF who I work with, and yeah, it's Little Italy in Science. Yeah, so I really try to promote the collaborations with Italian institutions, and also to get a little bit of Italian pride out of the Italian scientists here, and you know, to create a little bit of momentum and critical mass. So, yeah. And I have these fantastic parties at my house where we have Italian food. I import legally because given the accusations, I import guanciale, and we have these nice dinners with carbonara and with grisha, and we have parties with Italian people because I like cooking. So. Yeah, so what happened? There was a disciplinary procedure opened, initiated against the magistrate, the prosecutor, who in the meantime retired, and so the disciplinary procedure had to be closed. Finished. So there were a series of points that he had to answer. He was accused of negligence and of, you know, misbehavior, but he retired, and in the meantime, andato in pensione. And so nothing happened. And the journalist of L'Espresso I am suing l'Espresso within the framework of timing of Italian justice, which is, so you want to know the real, so the real reason why I decided to come to the States and to take the position in Florida was that I asked a few knowledgeable people, people who knew about the judiciary system in Italy, on how long is this going to take. So everybody said to me, look, there's nothing here. I mean, this is obviously all wrong. It doesn't make sense. And, you know, they made mistakes, one virus with another. They confused viruses in the accusations. You know, like, but how can you accuse someone of a crime punishable with life imprisonment and you confuse viruses? Like, I've been studying viruses all my life. So what is this? Superficial. Yeah, so like it really, you know, really didn't make sense. But I forgot what I was saying. See, I still get so wound up about it. You said what? Why I came to the US? Because they said to me, if you're lucky, this will finish in 3 years. If così, 5 years. If you're unlucky, 10 years. No, I don't want to spend 10 years of my life with this on my back. I have a life. I was 50 at the time. I was 60, and then I retired. No, you don't retire at 60, but no, I don't want to do it. And so I said, I'm sorry, but I'm taking this opportunity. I sold the house, and we moved.
May I add that the market vindicated Ilaria because l'Espresso is not anymore an independent publication. It's sold together with La Repubblica, so it is not a weekly sold
magazine
in newsstands anymore.
So yeah, I'm suing them, and you know, by the time, you know, the lawyers tell you it could take you 3 or 4 years. That's the average time to get to the first level of judgment. But I'm suing them. What can I do? I mean, I'm suing them for defamation.
One more question, and then I think we are done, if there is any.
So let me tell you this story about when Monti phoned me, because it's really funny. So this was, on the Befana Day, the Epiphany, the 6th of January, I used to go when I was in Italy with my friends to a spa. So, like in Abano, so there's thermal water, and there are saunas and massages and so on. So I was doing a illuminating treatment of the face, and the phone starts buzzing because it was silenced, and the lady who was doing it says, your phone is buzzing. Do you want to answer? I said, why? I mean, it's Befana. The kid is with her friends. My husband is on his bike. You know, why could be my mother or my sister? So I said, no. I pick it up, and I see 2 unanswered calls, 2 missed calls from a private number, and then a text with, dear Professoressa Capua, I am Mario Monti, Prime Minister at the time, by the way. This he didn't write, but it was quite obvious. I would like to speak to you with a certain urgency. Thank you, and forgive me for scusi being. And so, what do I think? I think it's a joke. Like, why would Mario Monti phone me? And so, instead of answering, who the hell are you? Leave me alone. It's my, you know, day. Because I was there with friends. You know, I had a group of girlfriends. We used to go, yeah, we used to go every Befana day to this. And I said, I am busy just now. Give me half an hour. And so I sent him a text. So I went to see my friends. One was in the sauna. So I had all my glasses all, you know, clouded up. And I couldn't find the other one. And I said, look at this. I mean, look at, can you believe it? And they said, look, it's probably true. I said, no, it's not true. So I put myself together. I had a pink bathing cap of the ones of the 50s, because this is like a joke, this Befana Day that we all, I had my, my robe, and when he picked up the phone, it was Mario Monti's voice that sounds like a satellite navigator. He does. He has a metallic voice which sounds like a sat nav. And so I recognized it, you know, like, and sono Mario Monti. And I said, okay, so this is not a joke. And then what happened, happened. But I was about to send a text to say, I thought it was, you know, some friend from the telephone of a daughter or of a kid, you know, who was just making fun of me. So I nearly said, go to hell to Mario Monti. Yeah.
Okay, so if there is no more questions, I thank Ilaria so much for this.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, Maria Teresa, thank you. And it's nice to see this wonderful Italian community. And, you know, even if I am now here and Italy has given me a hard time, I am still very proud of being Italian. And so thank you, and thank you for your friendliness and your smiles. I saw a lot of smiles. And a lot of eyes, like when I was talking about the investigation, eyes like this. But it's over now, so thank you.